Hello, I'm Gitika Saxena, and I'm excited to be presenting at the 2021 Responsibility Summit. My talk today questions the universality of narratives on data privacy, especially when situated in context of contact tracing apps that are led by privacy-first design. So what was my research all about? Situated in the phenomenological experiences of a contact tracing app in India, I interrogated the universality of narratives on data privacy. Of particular interest was the relevance of data privacy discourses for the elites in India and whether their access to information and awareness was key to formation of privacy considerations. Lastly, I asked how data is conceptually perceived on the ground. In doing so, I analyzed the constituents of the assemblages that influence this understanding. My research questions were thus threefold. First, in response to these narratives, were data privacy interests foregrounded in the day-to-day? What were the imaginaries of data and data privacy? And importantly, what considerations or meanings influence the usage of the app? Now, before I interrogate data privacy, it is important to understand the broader implications and perceptions of privacy in the socio-cultural contexts of India. And to do so, I adopt a genealogical inquiry into understanding the history of the present. India has a strong oral tradition of sharing information and knowledge across rich and poor. This perhaps explains why mobile phone usage continues to see exponential increase in the country and why the radio is incredibly popular. What this points out too is how people prefer to speak and discuss matters in a social sense. Indians are born into and live with a strong sense of community. The public sphere is prominent: marriages, relationships, jobs and salaries, health and diseases. These are discussed not merely with close family or friends, but often with the larger extended relations. And privacy thus stands out as a rather Western construct, complicated by the very Indian ontology of the social body. This in turn engenders the notion of privacy as standing for secrecy. It is no wonder then that the government argued against making the right to privacy a fundamental right, and in doing so tabled that only wrongdoers need privacy. In fact, where is it accepted is when it is applied to the affluent, in the sense of it being their indulgence. In the same argument against the right to privacy, the government had also suggested that the poor do not need privacy. The current conjuncture finds India in the midst of a strong digital push, where data permeates every sphere of life: the social, the economic, and the political. That data is not personal is acceptable. Indians' biometrics-based unique ID or Aadhaar is asked for during bank transactions, utility connections, rations, and now even during vaccinations. Not producing the Aadhaar number is socio-culturally unacceptable, even though a person might legally refuse to do so. And othering occurs in the sense of not allowing access to those services and products. And in a sense, privacy is institutionally sidestepped as well. And against this, the ruling by the country's Supreme Court in 2017, recognizing privacy as a fundamental right, presented new questions. How might privacy be interpreted and negotiated on the ground? With the context of privacy established, let me now turn to introducing the contact tracing project in India. The official digital contact tracing app leverages GPS and Bluetooth technologies to trace an individual user's geographical location as well as proximity to other users. To register on this app, an individual needs to share personal data, including name, phone number, age, gender, countries visited in the preceding 30 days. This information is stored on a centralized server, and a unique digital ID or DID is generated for each user. The app also provides a self-assessment form for the user to frequently report information such as symptoms, international travel, or contact with a COVID-19 case. As mentioned during my research, I placed an equal emphasis on understanding two aspects. Firstly, the representations, that is, the data privacy narratives that accompanied the launch and publicity of the app, especially what features of the app were being privileged by the knowledge actors involved in this project. And secondly, on the ground experiences, that is, the social facts, individual agency, and the day-to-day negotiations that were influencing the usage and user experiences. It was noted that the popular discourses and, in fact, even the anti-app activism centered on issues of privacy, usage, and retention of personal data traces. In a public webinar, a key member of the app project team established the primacy of privacy in the solutioning. He elaborated that the first and foremost principle in building this product was privacy first by design. In response to these narratives, the phenomenological experiences among the users yielded a contextual understanding of data and data privacy. Personal data traces were viewed in relation to the larger data set, implying notions of low discoverability. Furthermore, data was understood within an assemblage of constituents such as traces, servers, territorial sovereignty, commercial interests. Contrary to popular perceptions, even the urban elites considered privacy as a luxury. And importantly, privacy was a family matter, with interests of the family as a cohesive unit driving decisions to make the invisible visible or not. And lastly, a sense of security was derived not from what data was shared or the choices therein, but rather the sense of security was dependent on where the data shared was residing and what interests was it serving. In the last chapter, I proffer important considerations for design of impactful technology interventions that privilege proportionality or meaning realized by the user over privacy-first design. And in doing so, considerations of kinship, trust, and reciprocity have to be weighed in, as they indeed influence meaning in collectivist societies like India. You can see a few comments and user reviews on this page, which highlighted that the considerations for app usage was centered on the value that was being derived for the app in exchange for the information shared. The exclusivity of this value in comparison to other sources that were available, and the relevance of this value for the family as a social unit. A respondent shared, COVID is infecting entire households, not just individuals. This is especially the case in India, where it is common to have generations living together. If a family member starts showing symptoms, the household members prefer to isolate and recover together at home. In fighting the infection, the family then emerged as a single unit instead of a group of individuals. And this brought into question the design principles that considered each user as an individual decision maker with independent choices and agency. As the pandemic evolves, so does its realization in the digital. If contact tracing apps mediated how people engage with the pandemic earlier, today this role is being played by the vaccination portals. And I take the opportunity to return to the field here in keeping with the anthropological tradition of following temporalities. I note then that the sociality of COVID-19 and the family or kin as a social unit have now started manifesting in such downstream realizations at the intersection of the pandemic and technology. If the contact tracing app erroneously advanced agency as resident with the individual, the evolving vaccination portal corrects this and posits it as a social body. For example, you can see two FAQ responses that have been picked up from the portal. The first question asks as to how many people can be registered through one mobile number. And as the response suggests, up to 4 people can. And this is significant in a country like India, where in large extended families, you might not have everyone owning a mobile number. And the second question asks as to how can citizens with no access to smartphones or computers manage online registration. In response, it is suggested that up to 4 people can be registered for vaccination using the same mobile number. And it is also explicitly pointed out that citizens can take help from friends or family for online registration. So in this sense, it is heartening to note a phygital design approach to data and therefore privacy, where a very Indian treatment thereof is recognized and incorporated as opposed to a Western privacy first view. In conclusion, I propose three distinct lines of inquiry that need to be examined further as points of comparison. I agree that the individual actively negotiates privacy and meaning and is hardly a passive decision maker, even when it comes to data sharing decisions. There is an acceptance of data traces moving from the private to the public sphere, but only if it is meaningful for the user. On the other hand, if meaning is not derived, privacy alone does not hold value for the urban elites. At the same time, these choices go beyond the individual. Meaning derived from sharing of data is not limited to the individual, but is constructed and realized as relevant for the social units the individual is placed in. And in this manner, both privacy and meaning need to be examined in the context of immediate social relations and interactions for the user's social contracts rather than as an individual concern.